In Guild Wars 2, the Willbender is the Guardian's best elite specialization for the open world. It's also the easiest to play healer in the entire game. So if you were ever curious about playing a group support, but you weren't sure if it was the right role for you, the Willbender is a great entry point for that. And the best part about it, you don't even have to get 2 different sets of equipment to get started. You can use the same gear to solo legendary enemies and to heal your group in endgame content like raids. The gear is a full set of Celestial armor, weapons and trinkets. Celestial gives you a portion of every stat in the game, which is exactly why one equipment set can both deal damage and heal. On top of that, we use the superior rune of the water to get extra healing and boon duration. The weapons we use are a hammer and a mace and a shield. I like to play with these kinds of weapons because I feel like they fulfill the Guardian archetype the most. If you want to play with something else though, you can easily switch the mace and shield for something like a spear or a staff. In either way, we use the superior sigil of concentration and the superior sigil of transference on both weapon sets. They help us heal our allies more and they also give us extra boon duration. All in all, this means our gear is heavily biased towards healing and group support, but don't worry, we still deal a lot of damage on our own. Before we get into either build, let's quickly cover the Willbender's main mechanic, because it's the key to both the solo and the healer version. The Willbender's 3 virtues are the F1, F2 and F3 skills. When you activate them, you get buffs that keep triggering based on how often you hit your target. And that's why the hammer is so strong here. Every third auto attack drops a big light field on the ground called a symbol. That symbol can hit up to 5 enemies per second. So just by auto attacking, you constantly re-trigger your virtues. The first virtue adds damage, the third virtue gives you stability and ages, but the real star is the second virtue, Flowing Resolve. In the solo build, Flowing Resolve heals you a lot, which makes you very hard to kill. In the healer build, that same virtue is what lets you support your whole group. Let's start with the open world build. Before we go into the details, let's take a look at some gameplay first. This Hydra here is a legendary enemy in the Path of Fire expansion. It deals heavy damage, will regularly stun you, and constantly moves around. But as a Celestial Willbender, you will have no problem defeating this type of opponent completely on your own. When testing our damage in the practice arena, we see that our solo DPS easily goes beyond 16,000. That's quite remarkable given that our gear is heavily biased towards healing and group support. And the best part about it, the build is extremely easy. The basic rotation involves pressing your F1 skill off cooldown, disabling the enemy from time to time, and then mostly just auto-attacking. So if you want to have a relaxing time in the game while still feeling powerful, this open world Willbender build is perfect for you. So how does it work? The relic we use here is the relic of the Pirate Queen, to get quickness when disabling enemies. We can disable opponents with our hammer skills 4 and 5, or with our elite skill Heaven's Palm. The consumables I recommend here are the Fried Oyster Sandwich and the Bountiful Sharpening Stones. Both of them boost our power. The traits we use are Radiance, Zeal and Willbender. If you want to deal as much damage as possible, you can just take all the most aggressive options here, like the middle row in the Willbender trait line, for a huge power and DPS boost. However, there are ways to sacrifice some damage to get much better self-sustain. The easiest way would be to pick Conceited Curate over Power for Power in the Willbender trait line, and Renewing Splendor instead of Zealous Blade and Zeal. As a result, we heal ourselves every time when we create a symbol with our hammer, and whenever our Willbender flames hit an enemy. You could go even further and make yourself truly immortal with a few more changes, but I made a whole video about that kind of immortal build, so check that one out if you want. Let's talk about the healer build now. Most importantly, we exchange Zeal and Radiance for Honor and Virtues, and pick the trait Phoenix Protocol in our Willbender trait line. As a result, we no longer heal ourselves with Flowing Resolve, but instead we support our allies. The alacrity boon in particular is what makes this build viable. Also, because of Honor, our symbols now heal allies and give them might. With Virtues, we also automatically cleanse conditions. For the relic, we have a few options. I just went with the same one I used for my Celestial Firebrand, which is the Relic of Altruism, to give might and fury to my group. The food I used is Holographic Super Drumstick and Soul Pastries. Your most important skill as a healer is Flowing Resolve, because that's how you give your team alacrity. However, it's also good to use your other virtues off cooldown. What I typically do is to start with Crashing Courage, to give myself stability. Only then I use Flowing Resolve to generate boons. And at last, I activate Rushing Justice to get to the boss. Starting with stability is good, because you need to be able to attack the boss to generate more alacrity. And if, for whatever reason, you are stunned, your whole team will suffer a bit. For the rest of our skills, we have some good options. My default setup is Receive the Light as a heal skill, Stand Your Ground for stability, Bow of Truth for burst healing, and then Merciful Intervention to rest people. Our elite skill Feel My Wrath is a pretty good one because you then not only generate alacrity, but you also help out with quickness, which is the other most important boon in the game. Let's take a look at some gameplay and here an actual raid. Raids in GW2 are split into wings, and each wing is a set of bosses. Wing 4 is one of the best to start with, and it shows off both the strengths and the weaknesses of the build. The first boss is Cairn. Honestly, you can solo him. But in a squad, our most important job is to give our subgroup stability, with our skill Stand Your Ground, whenever the boss does this kind of attack here. Apart from that, we want to stand out of these red circles and don't want to move too far away from the group, otherwise we will burn people around us. If you cover these basics, you are good to go for the first boss. The second boss is Mursat, and it's actually quite interesting because it highlights the weaknesses of the Willbender. To give our friends the boons they need, like alacrity, we need to move around with our second virtue. But that means that if you tank a boss, which is what I do here, you make it move around as well. And that's not necessarily ideal, because some DPS classes really profit from a boss standing still. But unless you play with a really sweaty group, no one will care, honestly. I just wanted to highlight this here. The third boss, Samurok, is pretty cool, because you need to deal a lot of Defiance bar damage, which we can easily do with this build. A good utility skill for that is Sanctuary. Also at 66 and 33% health, Samurok will summon 2 champions. We want to kick the smaller one, Rigum, towards the boss and then immobilize him there. Only then can we defeat the other champion. The push we can do with our hammer skill 4, the immobilize with our hammer skill 3. And then the last boss, Demus, is definitely the coolest but also the hardest boss of the raid wing. It's also one of the raid bosses that has the chance to drop an Ascended Hammer, which we can use in builds like this one. There are a few mechanics here, but most importantly, Demus will regularly spawn these red circles on the ground, which you need to get out of. Demus is also one of the bosses where your second weapon set comes in handy. With your shield, you can give your team Aegis to block attacks, which is sometimes useful in this fight when Demus does his big arena-wide attack. All in all, we can easily heal our group as a Celestial Willbender in Raid Wing 4, as you can see in the gameplay footage here. What this build is great for is to give you the easiest possible entry point to playing the role of a group support in endgame content. If you really like that playstyle, you could then check out options that are a bit more difficult but even better at the job, like the Celestial Firebrand or Luminary. And long term, it also makes sense to invest in a dedicated set of equipment just for healing, like with Harrier stats. The problem with Celestial gear is that you get enough toughness that you will often not just be the healer, but also the tank in a fight. But what I realized when starting to play as a healer is that it's often way more important to know the mechanics of encounters than it is to play the most optimal class with the most optimal build. To know when to grant your LS stability, for example, is much more relevant than healing 10% more or less. And what the Guardian is great at is to give you a lot of choice. We have some of the best utility skills in the game, like Bow of Truth for burst healing or Sanctuary for a lot of breakbar damage. And so we typically have the right tools at our hand for most encounters. So that's the Celestial Willbender, a great solo build and the easiest healer in the game. And you barely have to change your gear to switch between the two, maybe just your relic. If this helped you take a first step into healing, a like generally helps the channel. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments. Have a great time and see you next time.